New Orleans Saints, Cleveland Browns recap with Pro Football Focus. All right, so usually we do the Pro Football Focus preview. We did not this week, so we are doing the review and seeing what they say about the Saints. If I had to guess, it's going to be pretty much exclusively Taysom Hill glazing, which I'm here for. I'm never going to pass an opportunity for that. But I want to hear what they have to say about this game, see if they have any nuggets of analytics or anything from the PFF data group thing. So let's go ahead and get into this. I'll be reacting along the way, ladies and gentlemen. Sit back, kick your feet up, and enjoy the ride.
New Orleans wins this game 35-14. So, first 2 weeks of the season, Saints looked like one of the best teams in the NFL. And then what was it? 6-7 weeks? One of the worst teams in the NFL.
Mojo wears off a little.
And now, last 2 weeks, could be back, baby. You got McCoy back. Trevor Penning's playing well. The offensive line's playing well again. You don't have Chris Olave. You don't have Rashid Shaheed. Feels like no problem over here. This team's playing well despite all the injuries over the last couple of weeks.
NFC South is still kind of open.
Oh, it is?
True and real. I think the Saints are kind of settled into who they actually are. All right. Now, caveat that with the injury, or the injuries, but really the Chris Olave situation. So, the Saints are relatively shallow at playmakers, especially if you take Olave out. So they are kind of capped at what they can do, but they are still good offensively. And offensively, I have no concern about this team. If Chris Olave was there, if Chris Olave was the number one and he was rocking and rolling, I would have the ceiling for this team way higher. But I think they have settled into this somewhere in the neighborhood of like a fringe. Like if you could play the whole season over again, all right? And I'm not saying like take away injuries or any of that stuff, but just kind of where the Saints have settled in now. If you could give them the season again, I think they probably finish the season as like a 10-win, 11-win team. They aren't hey, is this a 13-win team? Hey, is this a 14-win team? They aren't that, but they also aren't, this is a 6-win team, this is a 5-win team, this is a 4-win team. Remember, before the season, a lot of people, both national and local media or analysts or whatever, were saying that the Saints were one of the worst teams in the NFL. They were saying that they were, Kurt Benkert had them as, a 2-win team, 1-win team, something like that. A lot of people had 4 or 5 wins, 6 wins even. I think it's pretty obvious that that's not the case. Like it's pretty obvious that they are much better than the 3-win, 4-win, 5-win, 6-win teams, but they're not quite up to the 12-win, 13, 14-win teams. That's where they are. And, it's unfortunate that we're going to have to scratch and claw and do everything we can do to just get 9 wins, to just try and get a wild card or whatever, because this team deserves like an easy wild card or an easy playoff berth is what they truly deserve. So, but yeah, I think they're somewhere in between what they're talking about, like, oh, they're one of the best teams in the NFL. And then for the last 7 weeks, when we heard that they're one of the worst teams.
It absolutely is.
It always is.
Yeah, no, it always comes down to the wire. This division does. Let's take a look at the top 5 graded players. Linebacker Demario Davis, a 91.2 overall grade. Tight end Foster Moreau with an 85.9. Tight end Juwan Johnson with an 84.8. And then tight end Taysom Hill with an 80.5. No wide receivers. Like I said, Shaheed's down. Chris Olave's not in the lineup. No problem. Just feed the tight end.
Yeah, remember what this offense does? Like we said at the beginning of the year, this offense is one of those offenses that's going to be heavy set, heavy personnel, tight ends, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, tight end 1, tight end 2, multiple backs. So this is kind of the perfect offense to be down receivers because they're not a like spread them out, air raid, toss it down the field kind of offense anyway. So yeah, that's why the tight ends are popping off here with Foster and Juwan. Foster and Juwan both made some really good catches in this game. There were a couple throws where Derek had to escape the pocket, kind of throw on the run, and they had to adjust in the middle of the route and made some fantastic catches. Demario was really good. It was good to see him flying all over the place again because I know he's been kind of mired this season and like, is this the year where he kind of falls off? So even if it was for one game, it was good to see him really perform.
Passing game, baby. So Derek Carr's all about.
Too.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I guess I didn't even. That's just. You know what? My premise to this was my setup to this was disrespectful to MVS in the last 2 weeks that he has had. Safety Jordan Howden at number 5 on this list with an 80.1. Derek Carr in this game at 84.7. On Cleveland side of things, Denzel Ward had an elite 92.0 grade in this one. Edge rusher Myles Garrett with an 82.5. Edge rusher Isaiah McGuire with a 79.5. Defensive tackle Shelby Harris a 73.9. Wide receiver Jerry Jeudy a 72.1.
I'm interested to see if they talk about Talise Fuaga, because I heard from some of the guys that Talise Fuaga was fantastic when matched up with Myles Garrett. And I would assume that would really boost his PFF grade if he's winning those matchups. So I'm interested to see if they throw any numbers out there for that.
Jameis Winston in this game, a 68.3. Stat that told the story, Dalton. What do we got?
Well, in part because of Taysom Hill, like you mentioned, who is he's a tight end on paper, but he's just kind of football player. But Saints explosive plays been a theme for us all year. Yeah. They want to run the ball. They want to throw deep balls. Okay. I think that the explosive runs is really a big X factor, and them not finding, he's been doing it for years. You believe Taysom Hill's 34 years old, by the way? Running the ball like that?
I only believe that because
that's what's kind of crazy. Like, that's something that no one really talks about, but the fact that Taysom is 34, like 34 is old for a quarterback. 34 is just old in the NFL. And you're having a 34-year-old play every position, play 98% of snaps, doing things on special teams, on offense, in multiple positions. I mean, it's really crazy. Like, it's crazy enough for what it is and what he is athletically, but then you factor in, like, oh yeah, he's also 34 years old.
Because people remind me of it all the time. I would not have had people not.
Well, you should have warned me before. You should have warned me before the show not to remind you.
Sorry,
I didn't know you'd already been reminded by the entire public.
I was too busy complimenting your hat.
Well, I know you have a big audience, so you got to remind me of these things.
They're all bots.
Anyway, true. Saints 4 wins, 18 explosive runs in those games. 7 losses, 16 explosive runs total. They want to run the ball because it's Clint Kubiak and it comes from Mike Shanahan and the whole tree all the way down. And they want to throw the ball down the field, which now that they found Marquez Valdez-Scantling, they can do that too. They have someone to take the top off because Rashid Shaheed's done for the year and all that stuff. There's a clear formula here with the Saints, and this is what it looks like now. The added dimension of Taysom Hill, which they should have known about this. I think there's I forget what the record is, but there's some crazy stat since Taysom Hill's been on the Saints about when he gets like 10 touches or something, that their record is like disgustingly good. I couldn't find the number in time for the show. I don't know what it may be.
Sometimes it's as simple. He talks about how the Saints want to have explosive runs and all that, and the games that they win, the games that they lose, blah, blah. Like, we can get really deep into the whole, well, Kubiak this, well, Dennis Allen this, well, Derek Carr this, well, whoever. Well, the Saints are the oldest team in the NFL. Well, sometimes it's just like, hey, the Saints are down 6 offensive linemen, and they have practice squad offensive linemen going up against the Kansas City Chiefs and the Denver Broncos and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like, sometimes that is it. Like, sometimes that is the situation where, yeah, the Saints want to run the football. They're down 6 linemen, so they can't, so they're going to struggle. And it doesn't have to go any further. It really doesn't have to go any further into the breakdown of it. And I think the Saints really did suffer during those 7, not all of them, but during those 7 games, they really did suffer from the matchups that were just absolutely brutal. I mean, absolutely brutal when you're going up against some of the best defenses in the NFL, specifically some of the best defensive fronts in the NFL, and you are cluster injuried at that position. It's just, that's one of those you put your hands up.
Saints fan in the chat can find that too, because when Taysom Hill gets at least 10 touches, they're like almost undefeated over the last like 4 or 5 years. He's actually not just a gimmick thing. He's a really big factor for their offense when they use him right. Love when they use him down on the goal line. I think it's a great thing to put in. And they just, it's the one time they really get away from the zone running game is when they put him in the cat and they have all those tight ends and they run power and they just say, go ahead. And like you said, also, is there any player in football who's more fun than Taysom Hill? Honestly,
no. When he goes off,
I know we have fun ones. We have Mahomes and Allen in the big games.
I think it's very.
Even whenever he doesn't, like even like a 3-4 yard run, if you watch the Saints, the 3-4 yard runs with Taysom, it's always like, okay, Taysom should probably get stopped in the backfield here, and he runs all over the place, bowls over 2 people. Next thing you know, he gets 3-4 yards. It's like, how did he do this? He is a very, very fun player to watch.
Very frustrating for teams that are playing on the other side of it when he goes off.
Well, it's so much to prepare for.
Yeah.
He plays every position.
He gets a bad rap because of the year that Sean Payton was like, all right, screw you. I'll put him at quarterback. I'll do it.
He wasn't that bad.
Yeah, why does he get a bad rap? He was perfectly fine. I mean, you don't think I'll tell you this, Taysom Hill at quarterback is better than Cooper Rush at quarterback. I'll tell you that. And I'll say it because I can't prove it, but I would rather have Taysom Hill at quarterback for a season than Daniel Jones at quarterback for a season.
Well, he wasn't good at passing.
Sure.
Come on, let's be honest.
No, but you running off then at that point as a backup.
He was what Vanderbilt's doing with Diego Pavia.
Honestly, I might have earlier this year. If it was me and knowing I had that guy, I probably would have played him over Rattler. And I know that.
Looking back, that is a question where it's like looking back, it's like, why didn't we do that? Why didn't we at least try that? Why didn't we at least say, you know what, the Rattler thing isn't working. Maybe that's just not Kubiak's bag. Like maybe that is just a little too much Sean Payton. It's just a little too much Sean Payton where it's like, Kubiak's not prepared to have him play quarterback for an entire game, whereas Sean Payton certainly was. So maybe that's why. But you do wonder, like, what I mean, I'm sure it would have been different.
They just drafted Rattler and they want to believe.
Yeah, we're never going to do that. But I hear what you're saying.
They weren't gonna, but that's where I would go. I would have gone with that. Just run the football like crazy with him then. But I mean, either way, just a great player that I think sometimes gets passed off as a gimmick, and there's so few players that can do what he does. On top of playing special teams and return and kick, he was a 34-year-old kick returner who used to play quarterback and does all the other things he does on offense. I mean, he's just a great football player.
7 carries, 138 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, 10 targets, 8 catches, 50 receiving yards.
And an interception. To your
and
point about the passing. He did throw an interception in this game.
But like with Taysom and the passing thing, like I saw there was a game with Sean McVay a long time ago when Jared Goff was just kind of struggling. McVay called 13 consecutive play-action rollout passes. 13 consecutive. And whoever they were playing at the time couldn't stop it. And it was just like play-action rollout, levels, Goff just found whoever. Just over and over and over and over. If you do that with Taysom, I mean, I'm not going to say it's unstoppable, but a play-action rollout with Taysom seems like it would be pretty unstoppable, where you're either giving it to Kamara on the actual handoff, or you're letting Taysom roll out with it where he can run, or dump it off to the levels of, Foster and Juwan or however you want to do it. Like, to me, that seems like pretty efficient if you're down to it. I'm not saying like for a full season, but if, you're in a situation where Spencer Rattler's not playing well, you're not doing anything on offense, it's like, let's just do this. Let's just do this, and then we can also, sprinkle in Rattler or Haener for 10, 15 snaps and do other stuff. But I would have loved to see in a world where you could just see what would have happened. I would have loved to see what would have happened in those games.
Which is tough, but you know what? He fights through it. He keeps doing the million jobs.
The Saints' offense is so balanced yesterday. Yeah. Well, the offensive line, so you get McCoy back in the lineup. Trevor Penning is playing better. Like I mentioned, the offensive line just in general is playing better for the Saints. They're back healthy because I think that it's worth noting they were healthy in weeks 1 and weeks 2 when we called them one of the better teams in the NFL. Yeah. Then they've gone through a lot of injuries along the offensive line. Fuanga's been out. McCoy has been out. Now those guys are back in there. So it's looking better, obviously. I think that that's certainly something that is of note. But 259 passing yards in this game, 214 yards rushing. Normally, balance doesn't weigh out like that. Normally, balance in the NFL, a healthy yet explosive offense is probably something a little bit closer to like 250, 275 yards passing, and then, I don't know.
$130.
I was going to say like anywhere from 125 to 175 rushing. And that's balanced. I think people when people think of balance, they think it has to be 50-50. That's not really how it's supposed to work. Passing the ball is more advantageous, explosive, and you score more points when you pass the football. And it doesn't mean running's not important and also a pivotal part to the game, but like balance, average completion is just it's always going to be double what an average.
Yeah, I mean, what are we even talking about here? Yeah, I mean, like anyone that thinks balance is 200 yards rushing, 200 yards passing is insane. I mean, like an easy way to do it, I guess, is if you want to do like what your success rate is or what your success, like average success yards for a completion versus a rush. And then as long as you're balanced in successfully doing both, relatively balanced amount of times. Like, yeah, balance just means you can do both as far as like an offense. It doesn't mean you have 20 passes, 20 rushes. It does, I mean, that's crazy.
Average carry is going to be. So you obviously want your passing yards to be a lot higher. If your passing yards and your rushing yards are even, like if it's, 200 and 200, sure, you're running the ball really great, but when you play some of the better passing offenses in the NFL, are you going to be able to keep up? I think that's an issue that you have. So anyways, all of that to say, the Saints offense is pretty dang balanced, especially the way that they played yesterday. And Taysom Hill.
Well, the Shanahan system is any team that wants to run the football first is going to be balanced. And that's what all of these offenses want to do. All of these offenses, whether it's the Rams or the Dolphins or the 49ers or the Saints, they want to run the ball. Like, they want to efficiently and effectively run the football and pass off of that. But they are more than happy to run the ball, control the clock. So, and the Saints are absolutely like that. I mean, we talked about it in the lead up to the Browns game, where when the Saints are leading, when the Saints have control of a game, they are more than willing to just run and run and run and run and eat clock. And I mean, that's what they do. That's what all these offenses do.
That was a massive reason why he was able to get going, and it was a lot of fun to watch him. He has like an elite game every single year. One or two, at least one, sometimes two.
The Taysom Hill game.
It is every single year we get the Taysom Hill game, and this was the Taysom Hill game. And anytime you line up against the New Orleans Saints, you just pray that you're not that team, because it's so hard to beat this team. You're right. I don't know what the record is when Taysom Hill goes off like this, but it's got to be a good record.
There's some record when he has at least 10 touches. I'll have to dig through and find it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's something like 11-2. It is crazy. It's like 11-2 whenever it might even be 11-0 whenever he gets like 8 or more carries
later. But when he gets at least 10 touches, they win like almost every game. They just find ways to get him involved, and it's all sorts of nonsense from there.
But I think it speaks more to they're successfully, because if Taysom's getting the ball a ton of times, and by a ton I mean 8 to 10, then more than likely the whole offense is working, because Taysom can't be effective if the offense isn't working. They're not going to go to him that many times. So it's usually a reflection of, hey, we have the defense completely on the back foot. The defense is completely lost. We are running at will. We're passing at will. We're able to even get the play count up to get Taysom 8 to 10 carries. So it's usually a reflection of just how good the game is going for the Saints. It's more about that than it is about Taysom directly. Now, this game was Taysom directly impacting it, but overall, I would say it's just more of the philosophy of hey, we're being creative, we're being innovative, we're expanding the playbook, we have the defense off guard, we're getting everyone involved, we're showing all kind of different personnel looks, we're doing all kind of different misdirection. And if you say all those things, the Saints are probably in a space to win those games if they're doing all those things. And if they're doing all those things, Taysom is usually the beneficiary of that.
Most disappointing or most impressive? Go ahead.
Impressive. I'll go on the other side. A guy I've been kind of worried about a little bit lately, but he had a great game. Demario Davis at linebacker, 13 tackles, couple of pass breakups, 91.2 overall grade. I thought one of the bigger plays in this game was right before the half. He had a pass breakup on Jameis in the end zone.
He had a couple of huge plays, huge run stops, a couple ones where he just found a way in, blew up Nick Chubb. Like I said, he almost had the pick six. So, yeah, he was fantastic.
That then led to the Browns attempting a field goal, and Dustin Hopkins missed from 27 or 29, wherever they kicked it from, real short. Not, again, weird day for kickers, but turned into a play that saved them 7 and then eventually missing a field goal. I mean, that was a big play before the half. And then just most disappointing, I guess, is just this game was actually tied going into the fourth quarter, and the Saints just teed off on the Browns in the next 15 minutes, especially on the ground. 138 rushing yards in the fourth quarter alone. And the Browns had a 29 run defense grade in that quarter. It just, whatever happened there with their defense, just kind of.
I mean, you could also say the most disappointing is the Browns' rushing offense. The Saints have not had a good rush defense, and the Browns averaged virtually nothing, I thought, on the ground at times. So I would guess that was probably the most disappointing. If you had to give, I mean, the Browns are horrible. So, you could say a lot. I mean, a lot is disappointing. The run defense, everything. But in this game specifically, you could either say the run defense for what they let Taysom do, or their inability to run the football.
Kind of came apart because they played pretty darn well for 3 quarters, and then it all fell apart on them.
Yeah, Browns defense to me. And just on the season overall, really, the Browns defense, I think if we could just kind of take a step back there, 24.8 points per game allowed. That's 24th in the NFL. 48.4 coverage grade this season. They're 21st in EPA per play allowed. That was supposed to be the bread and butter of this team, right? I felt like.
Yeah, I mean, I say it all the time, but defense is the most year to year. Like 2 of the best defenses in the NFL, maybe the 2 best defenses in the NFL last year were who? Cleveland, Dallas. 1 year later, a little bit of turnover here, a little bit of turnover there. All of a sudden, they're the worst defenses. It happens every year. Every year, we'll have one defense that all of a sudden is incredible, and a couple defenses that were really, really good all of a sudden are bad. And you can even see defensive players go through that, where one cornerback can't throw on him. A year later, he's getting burned all over the place.
Like the identity was, all right, they're going to play really good defense. They got a good offensive line. And then we'll kind of see what we have with Deshaun Watson. Well, the offensive line's not been good this year, and the defense has not been up to their caliber over the last 2 to 3 seasons, and that was just always going to be a recipe for disaster this season for the Cleveland Browns. Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and.
Alrighty, boom, there it is. Good stuff from PFF. Where do I get it? Where do I get this quarter zip PFF North Face? I'm gonna have to contact this hombre. Also need to see what kind of hair product he uses. All right, ladies and gentlemen, get on down in them comments below. I will see you in the next video.